Commander Jake Morrison watched the massive ship drift through space. It was bigger than anything he had ever seen. The dark hull seemed to eat light instead of reflecting it. 3 days had passed since it appeared near the edge of their solar system, and nobody knew where it came from. Jake stood on the bridge of his ship, the Stellar Dawn. His crew was nervous. Everyone in the Galactic Council was asking the same question. What was this mysterious vessel? "Sir, we're getting something," said Lisa Park, his communications officer. She pressed her headset closer to her ear. "It's a transmission, but the language is old. Really old. The computer is having trouble translating it." Jake moved closer to her station. "What does it say?" Lisa frowned at her screen. "I think it says request permission to approach home." "But that doesn't make sense. This is human space." Tony Blake, Jake's first officer, shook his head. "Maybe the translation is wrong. No ship that size should be able to move so quietly." The mysterious vessel was at least 10 times larger than their biggest warships. Its surface looked like liquid metal that had been frozen in time. Strange patterns moved across its hull, creating shapes that hurt to look at for too long. "Sir, another transmission coming in," Lisa announced. This time her voice was excited and scared at the same time. "The computer has figured out more of the language. It says, 'This is the Ark ship Endurance. We are the children of Earth, returning from the long dark. Request permission to approach Terra.'" The bridge became completely quiet. Jake felt his heart skip a beat. Earth was a legend. Most humans believed it was their homeworld, but nobody had ever found it. The old records were lost or damaged. Some aliens even thought Earth was just a story humans told to make themselves feel important. "Did they just say they're from Earth?" Tony whispered. Jake nodded slowly. "Lisa, send a response. Tell them they have permission to approach, but keep our weapons ready." "Should I contact Fleet Command?" Lisa asked. "Yes, but don't panic anyone yet. This could be some kind of trick." As the hours passed, more details became clear. The ship was not just big, it was ancient. The metal showed signs of being in space for thousands of years. Yet it moved with purpose, as if it knew exactly where it was going. Dr. Elena Rodriguez, their science officer, worked hard to study the incoming data. "Commander, this is impossible. The ship's design doesn't match any known technology. It's like someone built it using completely different rules of physics." Jake studied the readings on her screen. Energy signatures unlike anything in their databases. Hull materials that their sensors couldn't identify. And most strange of all, the ship seemed to be bigger inside than outside. "How many people are on board?" he asked. Elena shook her head. "That's the weird part. I'm reading life signs, but not normal ones. It's like the entire ship is alive, but also carrying living beings. I can't make sense of it." The Endurance slowly approached their position. As it got closer, more details became visible. The hull was covered in symbols and patterns that seemed to shift when nobody was looking directly at them. Lights moved beneath the surface like blood through veins. "Incoming message," Lisa announced. "This time it's coming through visual channels." The main screen flickered, then showed the face of a man. He looked human, but something was different about his eyes. They seemed older than his face, as if he had seen things that no human should see. "Greetings," the man said. His voice was calm and carried no threat. "I am Captain Steve Rogers of the Ark ship Endurance. We have traveled far to return to this place. Are you the children of the colony ships?" Jake stepped forward. "I am Commander Jake Morrison of the human colonial fleet. You say you're returning. Returning from where?" Captain Rogers smiled, but it was a sad smile. "From the space between galaxies. We have been waiting in the dark for 15,000 years, waiting for the time when it would be safe to come home." Tony leaned close to Jake and whispered, 15,000 years? That's impossible. No human could live that long." "We know. This is hard to believe," Rogers continued as if he had heard Tony's whisper. "But we carry the proof of our journey. We are the last survivors of Earth, the children of humanity's first home. We left when our world faced destruction. Now we return to find our scattered family." Elena was frantically checking her computers. "Commander, the ship is definitely ancient, The radiation patterns match something that old, but how could anyone survive for so long? Captain Rogers, Jake said, you claim to be from Earth? Can you prove this? The image of Rogers nodded. We carry with us the complete records of Earth, the true history of humanity, the reason why we left and why we had to wait so long to return. But more than that, we carry knowledge. Knowledge that your people will need in the days to come. What kind of knowledge? Roger's expression became serious. The galaxy is in danger. Not from war or disease, but from something much older and more powerful. We learned about it during our long journey in the dark. There are forces that test civilizations, Commander. Test whether they deserve to continue existing. Jake felt cold despite the warm air on the bridge. What kind of test? The kind that entire species fail, Rogers replied. And if they fail, they disappear. Forever. We have seen the remains of those who failed before us. Empty worlds. Silent stars. Civilizations erased from history as if they never existed. Lisa was monitoring dozens of channels. Sir, every ship in the fleet is asking for orders. The other species in the council want to know what's happening. Jake made his decision. Captain Rogers, request permission to come aboard. We need to talk face to face. Granted, Commander. But be aware, our ship may seem strange to you. We have changed during our long journey. The darkness between galaxies teaches lessons that transform those who learn them. As the stellar dawn moved toward the massive Endurance, Jake wondered what they were about to discover. Were these really humans from the legendary Earth? And what had happened to them during 15,000 years in the void between galaxies? The answers would change everything humanity thought they knew about themselves and their place in the galaxy. But first, Jake had to decide whether to trust these mysterious travelers who claimed to be family returning from the longest journey in human history. Dr. Elena Rodriguez stared at the ancient data streaming from the Endurance. For 2 days she had been working to decode the information, and what she found was changing everything she thought she knew about human history. The records were complete. More complete than anything that existed in human space. They told the story of Earth, a real world, not a legend. Pictures of blue oceans, green forests, and cities filled with billions of people. It was beautiful and terrible at the same time. Elena called Commander Morrison to her lab. Jake, you need to see this. The story they're telling is true. All of it. Jake looked at the images floating above Elena's desk. These could be fake. Computer-generated. No, they're real. I've run every test I can think of. The radiation dating, the material composition, even the way light bounces off objects in the pictures. It's all consistent. This is documentation of a real world. The story the data told was incredible. 15,000 years ago, Earth's sun began acting strange. Solar flares grew stronger and more frequent. Scientists realized that the planet would soon become uninhabitable. Humanity had to choose, stay and die or leave forever. They split into 2 groups, Elena explained, pulling up a holographic display. One group built the colony ships. These were our ancestors. They traveled to nearby star systems and founded the worlds we know today. Jake nodded. This part matched what humans already believed about their history. But the second group chose a different path, Elena continued. They were led by a scientist named Dr. Amy Carter. She had developed something called a dimensional fold drive. Instead of going to nearby stars, they decided to hide. Hide where? In the space between galaxies, the void. They built one massive ship, loaded it with 50 million people, and disappeared into dark space. Jake studied the technical diagrams Elena was showing him. Why would they do that? The void between galaxies is empty, cold. Nothing can live there. Because Dr. Carter had calculated something the colony shipbuilders missed. The solar activity wasn't random. It was part of a cycle. Every 15,000 years, the sun would become dangerous for about a century, then return to normal. If they could wait it out, they could come home. Elena brought up more files. Medical records, engineering reports, psychological studies. The planning for their journey had been incredible. Advanced stasis systems to keep people alive for thousands of years. Fusion reactors that could run for millennia. Computer systems that could maintain the ship while everyone slept. But here's the really interesting part, Elena said, her voice filled with excitement. They didn't just sleep the whole time. The records show they woke up periodically to maintain the ship and study their surroundings. And they found something out there. Before Jake could ask what they found, Lisa's voice came over the communication system. Commander Captain Rogers is requesting another meeting. He says it's time to explain what really happened during their journey. An hour later, Jake stood in the Endurance's main conference room. The ship was as strange inside as it looked outside. The walls seemed to pulse with their own light, and the floor felt solid but also somehow alive under his feet. Captain Rogers entered with two other people. One was a woman who looked to be in her 40s with silver hair and bright green eyes. The other was a man who seemed younger, but carried himself like someone much older. Commander Morrison, let me introduce Dr. Helen Brooks, our Chief Science Officer, and Lieutenant Commander Paul Martinez, our Navigation Specialist. Jake shook hands with each of them. Their skin felt normal, but their grip was stronger than it should be. And their eyes. All three of them had that same look of having seen too much. Captain, my science officer has been studying your records. She says you found something in the void between galaxies. Rogers nodded and gestured for everyone to sit. We did. Something wonderful and terrifying. We discovered that the space between galaxies isn't empty at all. It's full of life, just not the kind of life that planets usually produce. Dr. Brooks leaned forward. We call them the architects. They're beings made of pure energy, organized in ways that our language can't really describe. They've been building something in the dark for millions of years. Building what? Jake asked. The galaxy itself, Martinez answered. The spiral arms, the way stars form, the paths that planets take around their suns, none of it's natural. It's all been carefully designed. Jake felt dizzy. You're saying the galaxy is artificial? Not artificial, Rogers corrected. Guided, shaped. The architects don't create life, but they create the conditions where life can grow and develop. They're like gardeners, but their garden is made of stars and worlds. Dr. Brooks activated a device on the table. A three-dimensional image of the galaxy appeared. But it looked different from any map Jake had seen before. Lines of force connected star systems. Patterns of energy flowed between planets. The whole galaxy looked like a vast machine. Every spacefaring species in the galaxy shows signs of architect influence, Brooks explained. The Zentari's crystal technology, the Kethvar's warrior culture, the Silthek's quantum abilities, they all developed along paths the architects subtly encouraged. Why? Jake asked. What's the point? Rogers was quiet for a moment. They're preparing the galaxy for something, a test. Every few million years, the accumulated civilizations must prove they can work together, that they can transcend their individual desires and become something greater. And if they can't? Martinez's face became grim. The galaxy gets reset. All traces of the failed civilizations are erased and evolution starts over. The architects have seen it happen before in other galaxies. Jake stood up, his mind racing. How do you know all this? Because they told us, Roger said simply. During our 15,000 years in the void, we became their students. They taught us about the true structure of reality, about technologies that can fold space and time, about the responsibilities that come with advanced knowledge. Dr. Brooks gestured to the walls around them. This ship exists in multiple dimensions simultaneously. We can travel anywhere in the galaxy instantly. We can see through time to some degree. We can influence matter and energy in ways that seem like magic. They gave you all this power? They gave us the knowledge, Rogers corrected. But knowledge comes with a price. We had to prove we were worthy of it. 15,000 years was our test. Living in the dark, maintaining hope, staying true to our humanity while learning cosmic truths. Jake looked around the room at these three people who claimed to be human, but had clearly become something more. Why are you telling me this? Why not contact the Galactic Council directly? Rogers smiled for the first time since Jake had met him. Because the test has already begun, Commander. Ancient structures throughout the galaxy are awakening. The other species are starting to feel the pressure, even if they don't understand what's happening yet. They'll need leadership, guidance, hope. And you think humanity can provide that? We know you can, Dr. Brooks said. Because that's why the architects chose us in the first place. Not because we were the strongest or smartest, but because we never give up. Because we protect our family, even when that family includes people who don't look like us or think like us. Jake realized the magnitude of what he was hearing. You're saying humanity's role is to unite the galaxy. That's exactly what we're saying, Rogers confirmed. The architects gave us the tools, but it's up to all of humanity, both the void travelers and the colony descendants, to use them wisely. Admiral Kate Johnson stood in the main briefing room aboard the human flagship Victory. Around the table sat the highest-ranking military officers and scientists in human space. At the head of the table, Captain Rogers and Dr. Brooks from the Endurance waited patiently to continue their impossible story. Kate had been fighting battles across the galaxy for 20 years. She thought she understood how the universe worked. Now these strangers were telling her that everything she knew was wrong. "Let me make sure I understand this correctly," Kate said, her voice tight with controlled frustration. "You're claiming that beings made of pure energy have been secretly controlling galactic development for millions of years." Rogers nodded calmly. "Not controlling, guiding. There's an important difference." "Explain that difference to me." Dr. Brooks activated the holographic projector in the center of the table. The galaxy appeared again, but this time it was overlaid with flowing lines of energy that connected every star system. "The architects don't force anything to happen," Brooks explained. "Instead, they create opportunities. They make it slightly easier for certain technologies to develop. They influence the formation of planets that can support specific types of life. They ensure that spacefaring civilizations encounter each other at the right times." General Marcus Webb, Kate's second-in-command, leaned forward. "You make them sound like gods." "They're not gods," Rogers said firmly. "They're just very old and very wise. They've learned that the universe works best when intelligent species cooperate instead of compete, but they can't force cooperation. Each species has to choose it freely." Kate studied the energy patterns in the holographic display. "These lines connecting the star systems, what are they?" "Communication networks," Brooks answered. "The architects can send information instantly across any distance. They use this network to monitor the development of civilizations and to coordinate their guidance efforts." "Can we access this network?" Rogers exchanged glances with Brooks. "That's part of what we learned during our time in the void." "Yes, humans can access the network, but only under very specific circumstances." Kate felt a chill run down her spine. "What circumstances?" "When the galaxy faces a crisis that threatens all life within it," Rogers replied. "The architects only give civilizations access to their full knowledge when the alternative is extinction." Dr. Sarah Kim, the fleet's chief science advisor, had been quietly studying her tablet during the conversation. Now she looked up with alarm in her eyes. "Captain Rogers, how long ago did the last galactic reset happen?" "Approximately 4 million years ago," Brooks answered. "The previous dominant species were called the Vexhi. They were incredibly advanced. They could reshape matter with their thoughts and travel between dimensions as easily as we travel between star systems." "What happened to them?" Rogers was quiet for a moment. "They failed the test. When the crisis came, they chose to protect only their own kind. They built massive fortresses and tried to wait out the danger. The architects gave them many chances to change their approach, but the Vexhi were too proud to work with lesser species. So the architects destroyed them?" "No," Brooks said sadly. "The architects never destroy anyone. The Vexhi destroyed themselves. Their isolation led to civil war. Their advanced technology turned against them. In the end, they erased their own species from existence rather than admit they needed help." Kate absorbed this information. "And you think we're facing the same kind of test now?" Rogers stood up and walked to the large window that looked out into space. "Admiral, over the past 6 months, how many unexplained phenomena have your ships encountered?" Kate frowned. "More than usual. Ancient structures activating on dead worlds. Energy readings that don't match any known technology. Ships disappearing in regions that should be safe. Those are the testing mechanisms," Brooks explained. "They've been dormant for millions of years, waiting for the right moment to activate. The moment when the galaxy's civilizations are advanced enough to face the test, but not so advanced that they're set in their ways." General Webb was taking notes on his tablet. "What exactly is this test?" "A series of challenges that no single species can solve alone," Rogers answered, turning back to face the group. "Each challenge requires the unique abilities and perspectives of multiple civilizations working together. The Zentari's crystal technology, the Kethvar's warrior discipline, the Silthek's quantum consciousness abilities, humanity's adaptability. All of these traits will be necessary." Dr. Kim looked up from her calculations. "How much time do we have?" "The process has already begun," Brooks said quietly. "We estimate less than 1 standard year before the final evaluation." Kate felt the weight of command settling on her shoulders like never before. What happens if we pass this test? The galaxy continues to develop, Rogers replied. The architects share more of their knowledge with all species. Civilization advances to levels that are currently unimaginable. And if we fail, everything ends. Not just death, complete erasure. It will be as if our civilizations never existed at all. The room fell silent. Kate looked around the table at her officers and advisors. These were battle-tested veterans who had faced impossible odds before. But now they all looked shaken. Captain Rogers, Kate said finally, you mentioned that humans can access the Architect network. How? Rogers returned to his seat. During our time in the void, we learned to interface directly with the energy patterns that make up the Architect communication system. But it requires a complete change in how we think about reality. Show us, Kate ordered. Rogers looked uncertain. Admiral, what I'm about to demonstrate may be difficult to accept. The human mind isn't naturally equipped to process the kind of information the architects work with. Show us anyway. Rogers closed his eyes and became very still. For a moment, nothing happened. Then the air around him began to shimmer. The metal walls of the briefing room became transparent, revealing the starfield beyond. But the stars weren't in their normal positions. They were connected by streams of light that pulsed with information. Kate could hear the flow of data like a river of whispers. Not words exactly, but concepts and emotions and pure knowledge moving at incredible speed between distant points of light. She understood, without being told, that she was seeing the galaxy as the architects saw it, a vast living organism made up of countless interconnected parts. This is the true structure of our galaxy, Rogers said, his voice seeming to come from everywhere at once. Every star system, every planet, every intelligent being is part of a single enormous pattern. The test isn't just about survival, it's about whether we can learn to see ourselves as part of something greater. The vision lasted only a few seconds before Rogers opened. His eyes and everything returned to normal, but Kate knew that what she had seen would stay with her forever. How many of your people can do that? She asked. All of us, Brooks answered. It was necessary for survival in the void. But the ability comes with a cost. Once you can see the true structure of reality, it becomes almost impossible to care about the small conflicts that normally divide species. General Webb was writing furiously on his tablet. That could be useful for negotiations with the other council species. Rogers shook his head. General, you misunderstand. This isn't about negotiations or treaties. This is about fundamental change. Either the galaxy's civilizations learn to truly work together, or they all cease to exist. There's no middle ground. Kate stood up, decision made. Captain Rogers, Dr. Brooks, I'm authorizing full cooperation between the Colonial Fleet and the Endurance. We'll need to contact the Galactic Council immediately. Admiral, Rogers warned, the other species may not be ready to hear this information. The Zentari pride themselves on their superiority. The Kethvar see cooperation as weakness. The Silthek barely acknowledge that other species exist. Kate smiled grimly. Then we'll have to find a way to convince them. Because if what you're telling us is true, we don't have a choice. The Grand Assembly Hall aboard the Endurance was unlike anything the Galactic Council had ever seen. The massive space could hold representatives from every major species, yet somehow felt intimate and welcoming. The walls showed real-time images of stars and nebulae, making it seem like they were floating in space itself. Chancellor Vextar of the Zentari Coalition entered first, his crystalline form catching and reflecting the ambient light in beautiful patterns. Behind him came War Chief Kalen of the Kethvar Empire, her scarred armor telling the story of 100 battles. The Silthek delegation consisted of 3 beings whose forms seemed to shift slightly, depending on who was looking at them. General Marcus Webb stood beside. Captain Rogers and Admiral Kate Johnson as the alien representatives took their places around the circular table. The tension in the room was obvious. These species had been competitors for resources and territory for centuries. Getting them to work together would be like trying to mix oil and water. Honored representatives, Rogers began, his calm voice carrying easily through the large space. We have gathered you here because the galaxy faces a crisis unlike any in recorded history. Chancellor Vexitar's crystalline voice rang like musical chimes. Human Rogers, we have agreed to this meeting out of courtesy. But the Zentari Coalition has faced many crises. We have always found solutions through superior technology and careful planning. War Chief Kalen leaned forward, her massive frame making the chair creak. The Kethvar need no assistance from others. Our warriors are strong. Our weapons are sharp. What crisis could threaten us? The lead Siltec representative spoke without moving its mouth, the words appearing directly in everyone's minds. The quantum resonance patterns suggest significant disruption in local space-time. But such disruptions are temporary. Reality self-corrects. Rogers exchanged glances with Admiral Johnson. As expected, each species was confident in their own abilities and skeptical of cooperation. This would be harder than convincing humans to work together. With respect, Rogers said, "This crisis is different because it comes from outside your normal experience, Dr. Brooks. Please show them the awakening structures." Dr. Brooks activated the holographic display system. The galaxy appeared in the center of the room, but now dozens of points were pulsing with red light. Each pulse represented an ancient structure that had recently become active. These installations have been dormant for over 4 million years, Brooks explained. They are awakening simultaneously across the galaxy. Our analysis suggests they are testing mechanisms built by an intelligence far older than any of our civilizations. The Zentari Chancellor studied the display with obvious interest. The construction techniques are unfamiliar. The energy signatures do not match any known technology. War Chief Kalan pointed to several red dots near Kethvar space. 3 of these structures are in our territory. Our ships have investigated them. They resist all attempts to board or damage them. The Silthek representative seemed to shimmer for a moment. The quantum signatures of these structures exist in multiple dimensions simultaneously. They are anchored to reality in ways that should be impossible. Lieutenant Colonel Ryan Clark, who had been chosen to represent human colonial interests, stepped forward. The question isn't what these structures are. The question is what they want us to do. Rogers nodded approvingly. Colonel Clark is correct. These structures are challenges. Each one presents a problem that requires multiple species working together to solve. He gestured, and the holographic display zoomed in on one of the pulsing red dots. The structure was enormous, a complex geometric shape that seemed to fold in on itself. Energy patterns flowed across its surface in mesmerizing patterns. This installation appeared in the Kepler 442 system 3 days ago, Brooks continued. It's projecting a gravitational field that's slowly pulling the system's inhabited planet toward the star. The planet will be destroyed in approximately 60 days. Chancellor Vextar's crystalline features brightened with interest. A fascinating engineering challenge. Centauri gravity manipulation technology could easily counteract such a field. Could it? Rogers asked quietly. Have you tried? The Chancellor's light dimmed slightly. We have dispatched our finest engineering ships to study the problem. Their initial reports suggest the gravitational field is more complex than it first appeared. War Chief Callan growled low in her throat. Kithvar ships also responded to the distress call from that system. Our tractor beams had no effect on the structure. It absorbs energy instead of being moved by it. The Silthek representative flickered again. Our quantum consciousness probes detected intelligence within the structure. It is alive, but not in ways we understand. It does not respond to mental contact. Rogers walked slowly around the table, making eye contact with each representative. Every species has tried to solve this challenge alone. Every species has failed. The planet will die unless you work together. Impossible, Chancellor Vextar declared. Zentari technology is the most advanced in the galaxy. If we cannot solve this problem alone, then it cannot be solved at all. Admiral Johnson stepped forward. Chancellor, with respect, that's exactly the kind of thinking that will doom us all. Captain Rogers and his people have spent 15,000 years learning from beings who have watched civilizations rise and fall across multiple galaxies. They know what success and failure look like. Dr. Brooks activated another section of the display. The beings we call the architects have seen this scenario play out many times. Species that insist on solving challenges alone always fail. The testing structures are specifically designed to require cooperation. War Chief Kalan stood up, her hand moving instinctively to her weapon. You speak of cooperation as if it were a virtue, but cooperation requires trust. How can the Kethavar trust species that have been our enemies? Because the alternative is extinction, Rogers said simply. Not just for your species, but for all intelligent life in the galaxy. The architects don't test individual species. They test the galaxy's entire civilization. The Silthek representative seemed to become more solid as it focused intently on Rogers. You claim to have knowledge of these architects. Provide proof. Rogers closed his eyes and became very still. The air around him began to shimmer, just as it had in the human briefing room, but this time the effect was stronger. The walls of the assembly hall became transparent, revealing not just the star field beyond, but the invisible networks of energy that connected every star system. The alien representatives gasped in their various ways. Even they could see the vast pattern that underlied galactic structure, the streams of information flowing between worlds, the careful balance that kept billions of star systems in harmony. "This is the galaxy as the architects see it," Rogers said, his voice seeming to come from the stars themselves. "Every world, every species, every individual consciousness is part of a single enormous organism. The test isn't about proving you're the strongest or smartest. It's about proving you understand that you're all part of the same living system." When the vision faded, the assembly hall was completely quiet. The representatives stared at Rogers with a mixture of awe and fear. Chancellor Vextar was the first to speak. "The energy patterns you showed us. They match theoretical models in our oldest databases. Structures we believed were mythical." War Chief Callan removed her hand from her weapon. "Kethvar legends speak of the first builders who shaped the galaxy in its youth. We thought they were stories told to children." The Silthek representative seemed to pulse with new energy. "Our quantum consciousness archives contain fragments of memory that match your vision. Deep memories from the earliest days of our species' existence." Rogers opened his eyes and looked around the table. "The architects have been guiding your development for millions of years. Not controlling it, but creating opportunities for growth and cooperation. Now comes the final test." Colonel Clark stepped forward with a datapad in his hand. "We've identified 17 active testing structures across the galaxy. Each one presents a different type of challenge. None can be solved by any single species alone." Admiral Johnson activated her own display. "Our analysis suggests we have less than 10 months before the testing period ends. After that, the galaxy gets reset," Rogers finished quietly. "All traces of current civilization are erased, and evolution begins again with simpler life forms." The silence stretched on for long minutes as each representative considered the magnitude of what they had heard. Finally, Chancellor Vexitar spoke. "Assuming we believe this incredible story, what exactly are you proposing?" Rogers smiled for the first time since the meeting began. "We're proposing the greatest cooperative effort in galactic history. Every species contributing their unique abilities to solve challenges that would be impossible for any one group to handle alone." 6 months had passed since the Galactic Council agreed to work together. Colonel Sam Peterson stood in the command center aboard the Endurance, watching dozens of screens that showed cooperative efforts across the galaxy. It was the most beautiful thing he had ever seen. On one screen, Zentari crystal ships worked alongside Kethvar battlecruisers to stabilize a collapsing star system. The Zentari provided precision gravity control while the Kethvar supplied raw power from their massive engines. Neither species could have saved the system alone. Another screen showed Silthic quantum consciousness specialists working with human engineers to solve an ancient puzzle that had appeared on a dead world in the outer rim. The Silthek could see the quantum patterns, but they needed human intuition to understand what the patterns meant. "Status report," Admiral Johnson requested as she entered the command center. Dr. Nancy Wright looked up from her workstation. 15 of the 17 testing structures have been successfully resolved. The cooperation protocols are working better than we hoped. Sam smiled as he remembered the early days of the joint operations. Getting the different species to actually work together had been like teaching natural enemies to dance. The Zentari thought everyone else was too slow. The Kethvar thought everyone else was too weak. The Siltek thought in ways that other species could barely understand. But gradually something amazing had happened. The species had begun to complement each other instead of competing. Zentari precision enhanced Kethvar strength. Human adaptability helped translate between Silthek quantum thinking and more conventional approaches. Each species discovered that their greatest weaknesses could be covered by another species' greatest strengths. "What about the remaining 2 structures?" Admiral Johnson asked. Dr. Wright's expression became serious. "They're both more complex than anything we've faced before. One is in the galactic core, manipulating the central black hole. The other appeared just yesterday in the space between our galaxy and Andromeda." Captain Rogers entered the command center, followed by Chancellor Vextar and War Chief Callan. Over the months, these former enemies had become unlikely allies. Sam had even seen them sharing meals and discussing philosophy during breaks in their work. The final challenges, Rogers announced without preamble. The architects are testing our highest-level capabilities. Chancellor Vextar's crystalline form sparkled with nervous energy. The structure near the galactic core is unlike anything we have encountered. It appears to be modifying the black hole's rotation, which will affect gravitational patterns throughout the entire galaxy. War Chief Kalen crossed her arms over her massive chest. My warriors are ready to face whatever challenges remain. We have learned much about working with others during these past months. Commander Paul Martinez from the Endurance pulled up detailed scans of both remaining structures. The galactic core structure requires intervention at the quantum level, while simultaneously managing massive gravitational forces. No single species has technology that can handle both requirements. And the intergalactic structure? Admiral Johnson asked. It's a communications relay, Dr. Brooks explained as she joined the group. It's broadcasting something toward the Andromeda Galaxy. Our analysis suggests it's sending a report about our progress. Sam felt a chill run down his spine. A report to who? Rogers met his gaze steadily. To the architects in other galaxies. The test isn't just about our galaxy, Colonel. The architects are a truly universal civilization. They're sharing our results with their counterparts in other spiral arms. The implications were staggering. Sam realized they weren't just fighting for their own galaxy's survival. They were potentially providing a model that could be copied across the entire universe. How long do we have? Admiral Johnson asked. Dr. Wright checked her calculations. The galactic core structure is building towards some kind of critical event. Based on the energy patterns, I estimate we have less than 2 weeks before it reaches a point of no return. Chancellor Vextar moved to one of the workstations and began entering data with his crystalline fingers. The technical requirements for success are daunting. We will need Zentari precision controllers working in perfect harmony with Kethvar power generators. Human coordination specialists will be required to manage the timing of operations occurring across thousands of light years. War Chief Kalen grinned, showing her sharp teeth, and Silthic quantum consciousness abilities to actually communicate with the structure itself. It will be the most complex cooperative effort ever attempted. Over the following days, Sam watched as the greatest minds from 4 different species worked together to develop a solution. The planning sessions were incredible to witness. Each species contributed ideas that the others would never have thought of. Each breakthrough led to new insights that built upon previous discoveries. The human role in the operation was exactly what Rogers had predicted. They became the coordinators, the translators, the bridge between different ways of thinking. Human adaptability allowed them to understand Zentari precision, match Kethvar intensity, and interpret Siltec quantum concepts for more conventional minds. Finally, the day of the operation arrived. Ships from every major species converged on the galactic core. The combined fleet was magnificent, hundreds of vessels representing the best that galactic civilization could produce. Sam found himself aboard a specially modified Zentari ship, working alongside Chancellor Vextar and a Kethvar engineer named Vrek. 3 months ago, these beings would have been shooting at each other. Now they work together as smoothly as parts of the same machine. Quantum resonance patterns are stabilizing, reported the Siltec specialist whose name Sam couldn't pronounce but who had become a trusted colleague. Power flow is optimal, Vrek announced, his massive hands dancing over Kethvar control systems that had been integrated with Zentari precision instruments. All ships report ready, Sam confirmed, monitoring communication channels that connected the entire fleet. The operation lasted 6 hours. Sam watched in amazement as the combined fleet worked together to gently modify the rotation of the galactic core black hole. Every species contributed exactly what was needed at exactly the right moment. It was like watching the universe's most complex symphony being performed by musicians who had learned to play in perfect harmony. When it was over, the ancient structure near the galactic core simply faded away. Its purpose had been fulfilled. One structure remaining, Admiral Johnson announced over the fleet communication system. The intergalactic relay was easier to reach but more complex to understand. It required a different kind of cooperation, not technological but philosophical. The structure was broadcasting the story of their success to other galaxies, but it needed to receive a response from the participating species. Chancellor Vextar spoke for the Zentari. We have learned that precision without cooperation is meaningless. War Chief Callan represented the Kethvar. We have learned that true strength comes from unity, not dominance. The Silthek Collective offered their insight. We have learned that consciousness is most powerful when it connects rather than isolates. Colonel Clark spoke for humanity. We have learned that our greatest achievement is not what we accomplish alone, but what we make possible for others. The intergalactic relay accepted their responses and began broadcasting a new signal, not just to Andromeda, but to galaxies throughout the observable universe. The message was simple but profound. Cooperation works. Unity is possible. Civilization can transcend the limitations of individual species. Then, as quickly as it had appeared, the final structure dissolved into streams of energy that flowed back toward the space between galaxies. Sam felt a presence touch his mind, gentle, ancient, and infinitely wise. The voice of the architect spoke not just to him, but to every conscious being in the galaxy simultaneously. You have chosen unity over dominion, cooperation over conquest. Your galaxy will continue to grow and develop. Learn well, for others will need your guidance in times to come. You are no longer students but teachers. Use your knowledge wisely. The presence faded, leaving behind a galaxy forever changed. The communication networks that had been hidden now became accessible to all species. Technologies that had been restricted were shared freely. Most importantly, the barriers of mistrust and competition that had separated civilizations for millions of years began to dissolve. Captain Rogers stood on the observation deck of the Endurance, now permanently stationed in Earth's solar system, as humanity worked to restore their ancestral home. Beside him, representatives from every council species worked together to plan their shared future. 15,000 years in the dark, Rogers said to Admiral Johnson, who had joined him at the viewing window. But we finally found our way home. Admiral Johnson smiled as she watched Earth turning slowly below them. The planet was still damaged from the ancient solar storms, but green was beginning to return to its surface. More importantly, it was becoming home not just to humans but to all the galaxy's species working together. Not just home, she replied. We found our purpose. Humanity's role isn't to dominate or control. It's to help others work together, to be the bridge between different ways of thinking and being.